Hi, in this video we'll discuss my thoughts towards MMA and how these thoughts have changed over the years. Now, when it comes to my history of MMA, it was my very first martial art that I practiced. I was on a competitive MMA team, and I began on this journey when I was 16 years old. So that was now 15 years ago. So it's been quite a long time. And when it comes to like how I trained back then and how I would approach training for such a thing now, even though I have no intention of competing in mixed martial arts at this point, I feel that the time is times have definitely changed, and you see like kind of a different age when it comes to how martial arts is practiced nowadays. So my thoughts towards MMA is kind of like that it has become its own martial art in a sense. Because both the grappling and the striking have a very distinctive quality that aren't matched in your singular martial arts at this point. So we'll start with jiu-jitsu. In a jiu-jitsu contest, like, the ref isn't such a force for stopping contests, for standing things up. This isn't the case in other grappling arts, like judo, for instance. In judo, the referee is very much so a part of what's taking place in this event. But in jiu-jitsu, the match starts and the referee is basically there to keep track of points, or if something that isn't supposed to happen takes place, such as an illegal grip or a throwing technique that isn't allowed. Something kind of major has to occur for that referee to be anything other than a bystander. In jiu-jitsu, as far as mixed martial arts goes, this is different in that the referee, when a grappling scenario takes place, the referee is very much so on top of things and is dictating the action to continue, for instance, or is there to just keep things moving along. And it's kind of like in chess you have a standard format for how you play chess and a bullet format, which is your minute-long games. And in jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, it's kind of like a bullet chess format of that martial art. So it's much higher paced and not at all like sport Brazilian jiu-jitsu, where time can really be a great factor for making a submission take place. So you'll have time to really pressure someone into making a mistake in a sport jiu-jitsu context by like putting a lot of weight on them and making them need to get out of there. But in that strategy in mixed martial arts, it's a completely different thing, because if you try to implement that, the referee would warn you for like stalling and try to stand the match up, and then you would lose your position. So that's how it pertains to the grappling scenarios in mixed martial arts. When it comes to striking scenarios and how they're distinctive in mixed martial arts as opposed to traditional striking arts such as boxing, so these other striking arts tend to take place in a ring. And a ring, of course, has your four sides. And you're dealing with ropes as well, as opposed to a cage. So, in these scenarios, when you're dealing with a ring, you have four different angles to which an attack can be incredibly effective at these angles, because you can trap someone in there to help with your striking. If you get someone against this angle of this ring, then you can really deal a lot more damage and they'll have difficulties getting away. But in an octagon, you're dealing with 8 sides. And these 8 sides represent 8 different points to which something devastating can happen because your opponent can then not get away. And this is a huge part of the strategy when it comes to mixed martial arts. And it's foreign to any other striking art. You're not dealing with such a degree of disadvantage in a ring as you are to a cage. So this is going into my central argument for this video, and that if you are training for a mixed martial arts event or are trying to take your martial arts into that direction, then you should orient yourself to training in a completely mixed martial arts gym. A gym that, for instance, has a cage that you can play with and that you can learn the ins and outs of. A cage offers its own kind of strategy, and it's very critical that you understand how this cage works as opposed to a ring or a mat. And when you have this cage and you can work from your striking and your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into this arena, then you can actually get an idea of how a mixed martial arts contest will happen. So back when I started training, the thought was that you would take a traditional boxing art and a background in traditional boxing, and you would take a traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, and you would kind of merge the two, and then that would give you a base that you can then explore mixed martial arts through. But nowadays, that's not so much the case, because mixed martial arts has its own distinctive strategy, and it's way different than boxing, the strategy in boxing, or the strategy in your traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, your more sport-oriented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So now I would say that you need to go to a mixed martial arts gym that focuses on that platform. You can't just combine 2 arts. Back when I started, it would just be actually just a single art, and you would see competitors from there. So say someone had a karate background, and they would take that karate background and try to apply it into mixed martial arts. And they wouldn't even have a ground game at all, for instance. You don't see that as much these days, and the big reason is that there is way more regulation in place now than there was when I started. So back when I was doing this, like, you would have an event, and then of course you have all these scheduled contests, and of course nobody shows up to these contests because then they actually have to fight. So you'd have so many people back out, and then the event promoters would literally be able to call people from the audience potentially, or look for volunteers to fill their roster, because now they have, out of their 8 potential matches that they had lined up, they now have 3 and need a lot more to fill the card. But now you can't do that at all. And it also goes into like how difficult it is in these days to kind of pad your record, because the events are few and far between, and you have to travel significantly in order to even have matches to begin with. Everything's just so much more expensive with the tests that the fighters have to take in order to get their license, and the promoters have to have these so much more staff on hand, like an official referee. You always have to have your medical in as well, and it's such a more of a hassle to have an actual mixed martial arts contest that few can afford to do it. So back when I started, you could have like a mixed martial arts event once every month, or even twice a month, and that would give you a great means to fill out a significant resume when it came to your fighting. to your mixed martial arts fighting. You just can't do that in this day and age. And also, because of the now serious nature of these contests and how few and far between they'll be again, it makes it there's way more on the line. There was always a lot on the line from a health standpoint, but now, just because you don't get to do this very often, you need to make every opportunity you have at a fight really count, and that means that you need to be with the best possible team you can when it comes to preparing for these contests. And the best possible team you can will probably be a mixed martial arts oriented team. And I had one little bonus reason of why the sport of mixed martial arts is kind of become its own martial art. And that reason is that it's very dependent upon how the audience views you. And this is mixed martial arts at a professional level. So the difference between this and any other sport is that if the audience likes what you're doing and likes what you bring to the table, then you'll get more opportunities, and it's not so much record dependent. You could be on a huge years-long losing streak and come back to a title fight potentially if the audience likes what you're about and they like your persona, and that's not something you see in other martial arts or any other sports in general. So these have been my thoughts on mixed martial arts. And I wanted to make this video in relation to my previous video because in that previous work I was saying one should train many different martial arts, because while developing skill in one, you can easily transfer that skill into others. However, when I was discussing that video, like, mixed martial arts is kind of different. You're getting exposure in other martial arts like wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and some of your striking arts, but like when you're learning these arts to apply them in a cage platform, you should almost be exclusively focusing on this new cage environment and on this new referee situation too, because it's way different than any other kind of combat you'll experience. Your sport jiu-jitsu arena does not have this referee that's constantly on you trying to get you to do more so that the crowd is more appeased. And in your striking, you're not dealing with so many different angles as you are in a traditional ring. In the ring you have the 4, and the octagon you have an 8, and that 8 can complicate things immensely. So when it comes to your striking, or when it comes to your jiu-jitsu or wrestling or what have you, you'll need that octagon to really get an idea of what's about to take place and what you're preparing for. But I hope you have enjoyed this video, and you consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much.